All right, it's the final collab before the Texans get on a plane and go to Minnesota. Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you, or with you Monday through Friday. We do it at 4 o'clock on Friday because that's when we get the injury report. It's an hour and a half, 2 hours after we get the final injury report. And the news to report is Joe Mixon. They're saying that he's doubtful. I would bet on him being out, and Dameon Pierce officially ruled out. So life without Mixon, it looked like a possibility. After today, it is now a reality, Cody.
Yep, Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce out. That means it's the Cam Akers show. And we get to see if Nick Caserio found himself a gym after training camp started, or if he can just find himself something serviceable. Like Cam Akers doesn't have to go in there and be Joe Mixon from week one. Just give them a chance to run the football. And the doubtful designation, you're right. I mean, they might as well have just listed him out. I mean, it would be a medical miracle if Mixon was able to go. So Cam Akers, Daria Gumbawale, British Brooks, and maybe J.J. Taylor are the running backs available, and Brooks doesn't even practice with the running backs. So it's really Cam Akers and Daria Gumbawale, and how they're going to run the football, well, your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, the Dameon Pierce thing, I think people around the country that don't really follow the Texans closely, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm not being like, well, I don't know. I don't know how big of a deal the Dameon Pierce thing is. I'll be honest. If the equivalent of this happened somewhere else, I would say, oh, their top two running backs are out. But we don't even know the Dameon Pierce, and I think most people would say he's not really their second running back. That's definitely Cam Akers, and it'll be interesting to see how Cam Akers handles this role and what that role looks like. Do we see an equal carry share? Is Cam Akers getting 66%? Do they elect to play a Daria Gumbawale as much as Cam Akers because they want to pass? I think there's a possibility there as well. So I anticipate that at the very least, it's going to be like a 50-50 split, but I don't think that's necessarily what the carries are going to look like. I just think, and you might be kind of telling on yourself with Dare out there so much, but I think when they pass and when they're doing other things, they like to have Dare out there, and that's kind of what I anticipate that this looks like. I also do wonder, is J.J. Taylor active? Do they decide to activate him? I think that's a possibility. I think we might see the J.J. Taylor active in this game.
I if he's active, I hope we don't see him on the field. I mean, it just look, Daria Gumbawale reps ahead of Cam Akers in practice. So take that little piece of information for what it's worth. And as you mentioned, they trust him a tremendous amount in the pass blocking, pass protection. And so you may see more Daria Gumbawale than you expected. They went to him at the end of the game after the Akers fumble in the Bears game. And that was going to be an Akers drive. Like he had all of the plays except for one on that entire drive, and then he fumbles the football. He's in the doghouse. They let Daria Gumbawale run the football at the end of the game. You know, let's see if this week Akers bought back some of the goodwill that he lost with that fumble, and they trust him enough to put him in there maybe a little bit more than Daria Gumbawale. And we don't know if Cam Akers can handle a full game load. Like, I understand that he has had some moments in the preseason and he's been successful enough to make this team, but we don't know if his body can handle a full game load because he's finally coming back from those injuries that he's had, the multiple Achilles injuries. So we don't even know if he's capable of a full game load at this point too.
Yeah, and we don't know that even if he is, if they're going to be able to run the ball effectively, if they're going to be able to block enough, which the chances of that do increase because it's not all bad news. Juice Scruggs back on the practice field today. Jared Patterson, questionable. So Juice Scruggs, the center, he looks like he's going to give it a go. I would lean that way. How effective is he? Does the injury hold off? But I think Juice Scruggs is going to be out there, and we'll see what he looks like. But that's a very important piece of this offensive line. You can almost make a case that he's damn near the second or third most important offensive lineman on this team. If you would like to make that case, I would be willing to at least listen to it.
I just don't know how many. I thought Patterson was closer to him than he actually was. Patterson didn't look very good last week. He may not even go now because he missed practice on Friday. And so you got Scruggs back in there. That's the five guys they want. So you got to go out there and make it happen with those five guys. Tunsil, Kenyon Green, Scruggs back at center after the 1 week hiatus, Shaq Mason, and then Titus Howard. Go make it happen with those guys. And let's see what Bobby Slowick can can draw up. You mentioned the injury report, with the good news from Juice Scruggs being back. You get a little bit of a break from the Minnesota side because their second leading tackler is all of a sudden out. I mean, he got a quad injury. Pace, their linebacker, he's out, and he wasn't on the injury report all week, so he got hurt in practice, getting ready for this game. So he's out. That's their second leading tackler. They've still got Cashman and some other guys that are worthwhile there in that front seven, but you get a little bit of a break from that standpoint because he'd been playing, with his hair on fire for a couple of weeks here through the start of the season. A
closer look at the 2-0s. It is SNL, Landry Locker, Cody Stoots, straight from practice to your computer. Follow us on our YouTube channels. We got you covered on the digital beat, the two best to do it. A daily collab Monday through Friday, post-game show with myself on Sundays, and nightly streams at 10:30. I want to take a closer look at these 2-0s because I don't want to say that I saw the light, but we've been talking about how bad the Texans have played and they find ways to win ugly. And I'm not dismissing that reality, but I heard yesterday they were talking on ESPN and they were going back and forth, which is sometimes a dangerous thing to consume when you're hearing them talk about a local team that you know way more about than them. They were saying the Texans could easily be 0-2. And it kind of got me thinking, well, that's very true. Like they very easily could be 0-2. 0-2 is not that far away, which we'll see what that looks like. I think this week is going to be the most telling because it's kind of one of those that I don't know that you're expected to lose, but it does seem like a lot of things are piling up against you and you're probably playing a better team than you anticipate. But on the other end, I was talking to somebody today, and I think you were in the conversation. It was during practice, and they brought up that the San Francisco 49ers played like absolute ass, and they still had a chance to beat the Minnesota Vikings. And, oh, by the way, there was that 97-yard touchdown to Justin Jefferson that kind of prevented that. They also mentioned that Sam Darnold really hasn't been pressured very much. Teams haven't been able to get pressure on him. So I do think when we look at, both of these teams being undefeated, I think in the spirit of fairness, I think that's true with the Texans, but with the Minnesota Vikings, I also think there's a little bit of gray area there when it comes to their 2-0 start.
I mean, they played one of their games with the Giants, so the Giants are pitiful. So, if they lose to the 49ers or if that game was just a tiny bit closer to the 49ers, I don't know that we're all sitting here super excited about what the team in purple's been able to put together. I mean, most teams in the NFL would have beat the Giants in week one, and you beat the 49ers, you hang on. The 49ers don't complete the comeback on you, but I mean, it's not like they have like the best 2-game resume in football. I mean, the Giants that's one of the worst teams in the mix of who these two teams have played. Like the Colts are better than the Giants, and I'm pretty sure the Bears are better than the Giants too. And so, the Vikings are hanging their hat on San Fran. And San Fran came into this one banged up. That offensive line in San Francisco, outside of Trent Williams, isn't actually that good. Like I don't know that we talk about that probably enough in San Francisco. And they beat up the 49ers a little bit, and the 49ers didn't really take advantage of some of the advantages that they do have in that matchup. And hey, the Vikings sneak one out. And I liked that happening. And you've talked about this from the beginning of the week. It kind of helps you refocus if you're the Texans. Hey, they just took care of the 49ers, who we all believe are pretty good. Let's refocus so that we're not the next team that gets upset by the Vikings.
Yeah, and another factor about it that I think is interesting, and this I don't think this is relevant. I just think it's a cool fact. A day short of 3 years ago, when they kick off on Sunday, will be the last time that Sam Darnold led a team 2-0 against the Houston Texans. The last time was 2021, September 23rd, little Thursday night action, Texans versus Carolina Panthers at NRG. Christian McCaffrey ended up pulling a hamstring or something like that. And Matt Rule and them Carolina Panthers started out 3-0 before completely imploding and losing 4 straight games. 8 of their last 9 games. They ended up losing after starting out 3-0 against the Texans. So just a little interesting stat there.
Well, I mean, look, Sam Darnold's got a couple of random, Sam Darnold won that football game, but he's got a whole lot more of, Sam Darnold played in that football game on his resume.
Yeah. Here's the thing I also wanted to bring up. This kind of reminds me, this Vikings team kind of reminds me in a different way. Like, I don't think the strengths are proportional, but it kind of reminds me of like the Colts last year, where you have a really, really, really good coach. You have a quarterback who's been scrutinized and questioned as far as being able to start as an NFL player. And they're going to be a little bit of a factor. I think there's a little bit of that, at least on when it comes to Minnesota with what the Colts were last year. I know it's completely different, and the Colts damn sure didn't have Jefferson. I don't know that their defense is going to be as good as Minnesota's is, but I think that's another interesting little nugget, if you will, to
Kind of
pop
like
on
that
before the game.
I like that comparison. They don't have the talent that Jonathan Taylor is at running back, but they've got an incredible talent at the wide receiver spot in Justin Jefferson that the Colts don't have. And look, Kevin O'Connell, there's a lot of respect for what Kevin O'Connell can put together and what he's accomplished in Minnesota from people in the Texans building, including ownership when he interviewed for the job to be maybe the Texans head coach a couple of years ago. So, I mean, there's a lot of respect for him. And this is, it's very much not one of those games that's going to end up getting overlooked. Like, they should be ready for this. And if they get beat, it's because the Vikings were better that day, not because the Texans weren't ready or were looking ahead or anything like that.
All right, we got Jake swarming the super chat.
You ain't never hate.
Swarm.
Shout out to Jake. He says, let's address the elephant in the room. Why the hell do they think the Jets are going to the Super Bowl? Because they beat a bad team. I was going on this rant last night on the locker room at 10:30, which I go live at night every day. The way they were talking about the Jets yesterday was almost like it was like some sort of Super Bowl contender. I don't know if there's like some sort of like rule that you have to hype up and gas up the Jets, but I did not watch that game yesterday. Like, I watched the Ravens, I watched the Bengals, I watched the Chiefs, I watched every team in the division. I watch the Bills now, and I say, okay, that's the tier that the Texans are trying to get at. I don't take the Jets as serious as they did yesterday on the broadcast. I just don't think they're that good.
Well, I also don't feel like they beat a very good team. That's one of the most pathetic rosters in the entire NFL in New England. I mean, the quarterback situation's a mess. The wide receivers are probably the worst in football. The offensive line's a joke. Like, I mean, they didn't beat up on a good team. You know, if they'd done that to a middling team, I would have thought a little bit differently of it. But I mean, they beat up on one of the worst teams in football, and one of the teams that are going to be one of the worst teams in football. Like, I'm not excited. They don't scare me. They don't worry me. And Rodgers, I mean, everybody's like, oh, look at him scramble. He doesn't move right. Okay, I know he scrambled and moved.
He doesn't look good. It doesn't.
He doesn't move right.
It doesn't look right. Yeah, it does not look right.
The Texans will play the Jets later on, and maybe Rodgers is still alive for that one.
In that damn stadium, though. Woo, that's not a fun place to play. It is Landry Locker, Cody Stoots, SNL. Here, the Friday post final injury report wrap. I want to touch on something that's getting a lot of attention, the Brian Flores factor in this game. And I don't think that I've ever seen an assistant coach get gassed up as much as Brian Flores does, which is fine. I think he's a good defensive coordinator. I do think it's a little bit extra, though. I think they face a lot of good defensive coordinators, and he's coming off a fine game. He's coming off a good ball game. Here's my thing, though. Like, if we're talking about the Texans versus the Vikings, and we're talking about things that need to happen and things that you need to do to win this game, it's not optional to have to confuse CJ Stroud. It's not optional to have to call a good game on defense to beat this Texans team with CJ Stroud. So the Flores factor, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but what I am saying is that I think on the other end with D'Amico, I don't think you have to do anything too fancy, especially when you have those two guys on the edge and you have those two guys on the corner. I don't think you have to do anything too wild and too exotic to get the job done. So as much as I hear about this Flores factor and I hear about all this confusion and stuff like that, and Bobby Slowick had a badass quote where he said, you know, he tries to eliminate the impact that coaches have, impact of coaching. I thought that was a great quote. You better, because Sam Darnold's not going to go out there and outduel CJ Stroud. And as good as Jefferson is, the one thing that the Texans can look at with the Vikings, and maybe I'm wrong, is you can look at one guy and say, okay, if we take this guy out of the equation, then we're probably smooth sailing. I don't know that the Texans have gotten to that point yet where you can just say, we're going to take away Nico Collins and you free up Tank Dell and Stefon Diggs.
I liked so when you talk about the Brian Flores thing, you're going to hear a lot of people talk about, the pre-snap and the chaos that he creates and how he, makes the quarterback use their eyes pre-snap. And then Bobby Slowick summed it up really well. He said, we worry about what happens post-snap. We worry about what we see and how we react post-snap. And sometimes pre-snap tells us, but that's what we worry about. And I think back to just some of the little bits of info that we've had about CJ Stroud, about how studious he is in figuring out how defenses operate. I think back to New Orleans last year, very early in the season. So he even built on this throughout but New Orleans last year, he threw his first interception against the Saints, and he explained that linebacker did not do what he typically does in that play. So they showed him something that he had never seen. He threw the guy the interception. And that's what Flores has to do. But Stroud, it feels like he puts in so much extra work and actually can utilize that information. Guys can watch film and it doesn't ever take, but it feels like he can actually utilize that information. And so there's a limit to what the Vikings can do. Like, they've got some nice players, but it's like they've got a shutdown corner and a side-to-side, rip it out of the air linebacker that's like Fred Warner. Like, they've got some nice pieces that need to be in a good spot, but Stroud's ready for that and ready to counteract that. So I'm not super worried about this big Brian Flores love. I'm worried that they can get some pressure. I mean, coming into this week, they were the only team with more sacks in the league than the Texans. So they can put some pressure on Stroud. So I'm worried about that, but I'm not worried about the exoticness and stuff like that of Brian Flores' defense. That doesn't worry me if I'm the Texans.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot of talk about it. I'm not saying it's not there. It just seems
it's very buzzy. Like, it's very buzzy. Like, I don't know who Andrew Van Ginkel is. I don't know who Blake Cashman is. Well, I know who Brian Flores is. So like, it's very buzzy to be like, oh, Flores. It's like, okay. Like, how about you just talk about like some of the really good players they have?
I mean, for me, like, and I know this team, I don't know that these guys like really watch a lot of Sports Center and stuff. I think some probably watch it more than others. But for me, like, you always hear about, this guy watched them say this and that motivated him to do this. If I'm the Texans defense, I'm a little bit annoyed by the way and the manner in which Minnesota's defense is dominating all of the dialogue leading up to this game, because I actually think that there's a chance that we're watching two top 10 defenses on Sunday. And like, as much as Minnesota's done a good job, and as much as they've confused people, and as much as Brock Purdy didn't know what he was doing, and Daniel Jones looked like Daniel Jones, I think the Texans have a pretty damn good defense, and I think they've played pretty damn good defense. So if I'm Danielle Hunter, I don't even know if he has a TV. If I'm Danielle Hunter or Will Anderson or something like that, and I'm watching this, I'm just like, man, we got a pretty damn good defense. Like, you aren't hearing a lot of people talk about the Texans defense. And I know it's early, but you're hearing a little bit about the edge guys. I mean, but it's not getting a lot of attention.
It feels like, and they just played on Sunday Night Football when the entire football world was watching. And it feels like people have almost explained away Sunday Night Football as the Bears haven't done enough for Caleb, instead of, the Texans actually just annihilated whatever the Bears were trying to do. Like, it feels like it's been a lot more like the Bears suck and the Texans are good. And I'm here to tell you, this is a really good defense. And Landry's right. It's going to be a top 10 defense. I told somebody the other day, I'd be shocked if they're not top 5 in stopping the run when this season is over, because of just the way that they are so aggressive and attack things in stopping the opposing team's run. Like, this is a really good defense, and we have probably not seen people analyze this matchup and talk about it enough.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that, like, national media, I think it's like a good resource sometimes just to hear what people are talking about. It's not the end all be all. Like, I don't care what a lot of them say about the Texans, but like, if you just look at what they were talking about nationally, like against the Colts, I would say the Texans were the story. Like, it was like, the return, like the Texans were the story. against the Bears, it was like, well, Caleb Williams got roughed up. Are they blocking enough for Caleb Williams? And why is CJ Stroud telling Caleb Williams this? And now it's Brian Flores. Like Brian Flores, I don't think Brian Flores defense is a bigger story than CJ Stroud. I just don't, I'm not there. I don't think that's a thing.
And there's not one defender over on the Vikings defense that should be a bigger story than Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. Like coming off of that performance that they just had. So I'm so interested to watch how DeMeco Ryans is going to approach this, because Darnold has been pressured at a bottom 10 rate through 2 games,
which is crazy. He's
been blitzed the least in football through 2 games, and like the Texans aren't blitz happy, but DeMeco Ryans will dial it up when he needs to, and they through 2 weeks we can see it. They love to send Azeez Al-Shire on a blitz with those 4 defensive linemen, and something to watch as well. They will dump Derek Barnett inside and still have Anderson and Hunter on the field. And that's their like turbo pass rush package, where look, if you're going to get to the Vikings, they got a good tackle duo like those guys, Darisaw and O'Neal.
Yeah, they're good.
They're probably the least talked about good tackle duo in football, but their interior is pretty shaky. It feels like kind of almost mirror image to the Texans, because the Texans interior guys are a little shaky from a pass block standpoint. But I am fascinated to watch how DeMeco Ryans forces Sam Darnold to make some quicker decisions and plays a little bit tighter coverage. And as we've talked about this front 7, there's the cornerback duo of Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter. Like that's a much better duo than the first 2 sets of cornerbacks that Darnold played as well. So
it's not close.
He's gonna throw you one.
A better receiver than the Texans have seen too. So
absolutely. You got like Justin Jefferson is one of the best players you'll go against as a defense all year long. Look, Lassiter's been really good through 2 games. I'm a little worried when it's 4 versus 18, but that's for the Texans to figure out how to make that not be a huge negative.
He said that he's ready to go. Kamari Lassiter. So. We'll see how Chicago was also crappy on the interior too, and they were able to take advantage of that. So this is like back-to-back weeks of going against pretty suspect guards.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, look at Mario Edwards. Well, let's make it 3 for 3, big fella.
2 for 2, 2 game sacking streak. I guess that works.
And Fadakasi's going to play. He didn't miss the first day of practice, but he practiced the rest of the week, so Fadakasi will play.
So the most popular hashtag the last couple of years, and it was kind of in the news this week, has been no Diddy. Hashtag no Diddy. A lot of people saying no Diddy. This Sunday, Texans got a little remix for you. I don't know if they've made the shirts or not. I don't know if they don't take my advice in the PR department. They feel like they got the swag lined up. But this Sunday, it ain't no Diddy. It's hashtag no gritty. You gotta keep Justin Jefferson out of the end zone, man. You have to. If the 49ers stay at home as bad as they played, they win that game. The 97-yard touchdown was the difference in the ball game. Stingley and Lassiter, I think you feel pretty good about these guys, but I would say this: it doesn't hurt to help. It doesn't hurt to help a little bit when that guy's there. Now, the hard part about it, and DeMeco brought this up earlier this week, he moves all over the place. So
yes.
remember this? I'm old enough to remember, and I would only have to be about 4 years old, not even in kindergarten yet. I'm old enough to remember when Justin Jefferson was supposedly just a slot receiver coming into the league. I'm old enough to remember that. Now, people didn't factor in that he had Marshall and Chase out there, so they just kind of put him in the slot because he was good. But I'm old enough to remember when I think he was the 5th receiver taken in his draft, and he was just a slot receiver. I bring that up not to sit there and call anyone out on draft takes, because I've had bad draft takes on my own, but I bring that up to say it just shows that we're used to seeing this guy line up as the X and dominate, but he also moves in the slot and can dominate.
He is awesome. I'm also old enough to remember when everybody's favorite or social media's favorite general manager, Howie Roseman, selected Jalen Reagor in front of him.
Thank God he did. You imagine if he hadn't? Good God. They probably would have never traded for AJ.
So Jefferson, left side of the field, right side of the field, slot. They run him on short stuff. They let him just go deep, like you mentioned, against the 49ers, where, I mean, we're 2 weeks removed from Alec Pierce getting behind Jimmy Ward. So I do worry about Justin Jefferson getting behind Jimmy Ward. But it will be a really, like, that's the chess match. Like, he's the queen that can do so much for them. Like, how do you stop him if you're DeMeco Ryans? Okay, we don't stop him. Well, how do you keep him from beating you? Well, force Darnold to, if he wants to throw it to Jefferson, make it a difficult throw. There were so many, watch him back to San Francisco, there were so many easy throws, including throws to Jefferson, that Darnold could just, make him a cup of tea and then make the throw. Or just little quick, easy stuff out to the side. Like, don't let it be easy. If he wants to get it to Jefferson, make it as hard as possible to get it to Jefferson. You'll still lose some of those. He's still going to get the ball. I did find it interesting, Landry. We've heard this probably 4 times from like 4 different people on the Texans this week. He's 50% of their offense.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Like, he's 50% of their offense. So if you can solve him for a quarter and a half, like, you should be on your way to keeping the Vikings off the scoreboard.
He also appears to be kind of quarterback proof, like DeAndre Hopkins. He's a better player than Nuke was. No disrespect, both are elite, but he's also appears to be quarterback proof as well. So I think that's another thing about Jefferson that is interesting, is that he is quarterback proof. The other thing about this San Francisco game, and we appreciate y'all for joining us on the Friday edition of SNL here on YouTube. Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you. Post-game show, 3:15 in the locker room. Cody Stoots will have his video as well. And H Football always holds it down. The other thing about this is I like Brock Purdy. I don't want to dismiss Brock Purdy. I don't want to say Brock Purdy's not good. I don't want to say Brock Purdy's not really good, but there's going to be weeks in the NFL where elite quarterbacks are going to have to gut it out for their team when the A game isn't there. And I think even some quarterbacks who aren't elite, like, they can find ways to gut it out whenever it's ugly. I think Deshaun was really good at it during his time here as well, up till 2020. I think he was good at doing it. I think we've seen CJ do it twice now this season, and we've seen him do it before. I don't think that Brock Purdy is that guy. If everything's like going bad, I don't think that Brock Purdy is just one of those guys that's going to gut out a win. And I think CJ Stroud, with the way that he's able to extend plays, I think he is one of those guys who can do it. So that's kind of the difference. Like, when the Vikings are able to confuse Brock Purdy and get to Brock Purdy, I just think it's a little bit different with CJ Stroud.
Purdy's an operator, not an elevator. I mean, he can operate.
Say that again, Charles. Say that again, Jaworski.
Purdy is an operator, not an elevator.
Reference.
What's that?
Is Jaworski kind of a dated reference? Am I kind of dating myself?
Man, I wonder. I mean, it was some rough times there at the end, but Jaws still has a little juice to him.
They could still put him on at 2:30 with Sal Paolantonio, 2:30 a.m. if they wanted. I love that NFL matchup show. It was a good one.
That was a really good one.
But I think that's well said by you.
Now they got a couple of dudes looking at their computers, spitting advanced stats to you on the TV all the time. Or Dan Orlovsky saying whatever the hell Dan Orlovsky's saying for the week. But so when things are going well, Purdy's got a really high floor. And in that offense with those weapons, he can deliver. He can keep the train on the tracks. He can keep it running on time. He can deliver, and he does it really well. But when stuff's not working, when Debo's banged up, when Kittle's not 100%, when they can't pass block, what's Brock Purdy doing? Well, he's falling apart. We saw that against Minnesota. What does CJ Stroud do? Oh, I'll just drift, keep this play alive. Oh, there's Nico, because we have this insane connection where I can just drift to keep a play alive, and I find Nico Collins for a first down. Oh, I need to step up in the pocket and throw from a weird arm angle to get it over the middle to Dalton Schultz. Oh, I can do that. I slip and get the ball to my tight end still. Like, CJ Stroud can do so many things that Purdy can't. While Stroud can do everything that Purdy can, and he can do it just as well and maybe better on a lot of those things. So that is a huge thing that Like if Brian Flores walked in and said, if we're as good against Purdy as we are this week, we're going to win, he'd be wrong. You have to be better because CJ Stroud is a better quarterback and has more that you have to account for.
Yeah, and I anticipate them trying really hard to make Sam Darnold uncomfortable. Who knows what goes down? We do have a clear picture, though. Joe Mixon, he's out. Like, let's just be serious. If he plays, that'll be I'm gonna go get him a Willis Reed jersey if he plays. That might be a little bit dramatic, but
well, hold on. If you want to not be dated, you got to get a Paul Pierce jersey.
Well, Willis Reed references have always been dated. All these people bring that up. Nah, because Paul Pierce wasn't hurt. Paul Pierce just went to use the restroom. He was constipated.
He acted like he got shot though.
Yeah, he shouldn't have. As soon as your butt hits a wheelchair, you shouldn't be allowed to come back in the field of play unless you're a WWE superstar. That's the rule right there. You think you are Mankind, Mick Foley? What are we doing? Stoots, appreciate you. It's going to be fun. We've made it to the weekend. Saturday pigskin, manana. Sunday pigskin, Texans. Noon. We're back in our comfort zone of noon kickoffs, and I know we'll be on top of it. And we got everyone covered. For Cody Stoots, I'm Landry Locker. Always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Go.
Oh, you
Give
want
me a
me to do the
trademark.
thing?
Give me a trademark. Look, I tried to point to you, but I got to point that way instead of that way. I was trying to do the NWO thing.
Oh.
Yeah, I was
Oh
trying to do
yeah.
that. All right, let me. All right, don't play it. Down that. Hold up. When it comes to this Texan stuff, always remember we're all in this together.
Eat good, sleep good, be good. And we'll talk Texans again soon.